Okay.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another session of the State and City Council. Would all of you please join me in a flag salute? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Make sure the dream lives. Okay. There are enough seats to go around? I guess there are. Everybody grab a chair. Green slips up here, please. There we go. Get involved. Anyone else? Any more? Mr. Sublimity's here. That's good. Welcome, Randy.
Is that his official name now?
No, that's just what I call him. Okay. Let's see. Staff is here this evening. We have a lot of interesting business to do, and so we'll get right to it. Any additions to the agenda? Are there any declaration of ex parte contact, conflict of interest, bias, anything? Okay.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
For myself, I've received numerous communication via email from the RDS folks in regards to this ordinance tonight, and just wanted to state that for the record.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, those were addressed to all of us. In addition, the RDS folk for years have borrowed my furniture and for years have stored it in my house in winter, and I'm fine with that. So we've had for the
I'm
Parkette
sorry,
furniture,
go ahead.
For the Parkette furniture.
Okay. I received one letter from RDS. Did everybody else get more?
Yeah.
Was I left out?
I don't know which one you received.
I received a letter from RDS to the councilors regarding...
I think this was on their mailing list or something.
Oh, okay.
What's the date?
Okay, I received one email.
Well, we all received them, Mr. Mayor, so I mean, we've all seen them. We're all, you know, I also made an in-kind contribution to River Fusion and the Ghost Walk, and I know the councilor and the city administrator with the Ghost Walk, and that's great. We're precipitating things downtown.
Any other confessions?
No.
Okay. Presentations, comments from the public. There are lots of these green slips out there tonight that have to do with the public hearing, but there are a couple that don't. So I'm going to address those right now, and then this handful of others we can deal with when we get into the public hearing. So, Ron Sturba from Salem. Ron?
Yes, good evening.
Would you? Yeah, go ahead and pass those out.
Can you see your council members here?
Oh, I need to make another comment.
Go ahead, Ron.
I don't know that I need to make another one, but Brent talked to me about this today, about the commercial air thing. I was sitting at a table with him at the Salem City Council Forum Luncheon, and he mentioned that this was going to be brought before the council tonight and encouraged me to be supportive. So.
Mr. Mayor, I'm not the same person, but I've heard the same.
Okay.
Encouraged by these.
It just happened today at lunch.
Ron, can we expect at some point somebody from Aurora to come down and talk about commercial service at that airport?
Well, good evening. My name's Ron Sturba. I'm a pilot in Salem, General Aviation, but I do fly out of PDX. And as far as Aurora goes, I know that ODA had put up or has a grant, I think, for $32 million for expansion to Aurora. I don't know much about it other than they plan to make it similar to Hillsborough. what I'm here to address this evening, I was not the gentleman who was supposed to come this evening. He couldn't make it, and they said, Ron, you want to go? And I go, I can't speak in front of a group. But I says, I love aviation, it's in my heart. I've been a pilot for 48 years. And in Salem, what we'd like to do is bring back an airline or airlines to Salem as a regional airport. The regional airport would bring in passengers from Marion, Polk, Lynn, and Benton counties. Now, a consulting outfit called Vault Air, and they come up with a consensus. Before you even start going toward what you want, you have to find out, is it needed? And the fact is, the total amount, and I was surprised at this, 1.1 million passengers go through PDX from those 4 counties, either arriving or departing. And I went, oh, are you kidding me? So wonder why the numbers are at about 1,400 people a day are coming out of PDX or going to PDX, and wonder why 205 is so congested. The sheet that I gave you there, it talks about over 500,000 people live within a 25-mile radius of Salem. Amazon is now locating there, bringing 1,000 new jobs. There's a building boom in downtown Salem, a consistently booked convention center, and almost a full Mill Creek corporate center. Salem hospital expansion and a tourism destination. The neat part about Salem is that you folks here on a connecting route from Central Oregon, Lincoln City, Newport, come in on the highway from Dallas, Independence, and you have Woodburn and I-5, and they all come together. So a regional airport, as the group put together, would be quite sustainable when you take a look at these numbers. And what we're looking for is a support letter from your city to the support group in favor of Salem becoming a regional airport. Now, we're not talking about a lot of jets, but we are talking about destination number 1 is San Francisco. Number 2 is Las Vegas. Number 3 is Southern California. Number 4 is Phoenix. A lot of people are retiring, and they're traveling back and forth to Phoenix. And Las Vegas, well, that could be a lot of seniors. I don't know that, but I do know there's a lot of traffic on Interstate 205 going to PDX. One of the big things is a lot of businesses, as we've been told, are spending an extra day or 2 with their employees to travel to Portland the night before, stay in a hotel to catch the flight out because the traffic is so bad. And for my wife and I, when we travel, we take an afternoon flight because we don't know whether we're going to make it up to Portland or not. So at this time, I don't want to take much more time other than saying that it would be really nice for your community here. And I think being close to Salem would be a good idea. I don't know if a hotel here for people coming from Central Oregon, stay here, play golf, connect with a flight on out. There's a lot of possibilities in the business sector. So at this time, I'm open to any questions that you might have. If I can answer them, I surely will. I do have a gentleman I can connect you with for the letter of support. Presently, we have letters from the Oregon Wine Board in support, Salem Travel, Garmin, Western Oregon University. I'm holding those letters here. And there's many more. There's over $440,000 of money that people have said they would put up to help with grant money when they apply for a grant. One of them is for $750,000. So at this time, there's a lot of businesses who say this will save our company money, and a lot of people here will be able to travel without going to Portland and staying in the hotel. So I thank you very much, and I'm open to any questions.
Go ahead, Councilor.
Yes.
So if I heard you correct, you aren't looking for any money from us. You are just looking for a letter of support saying that the governing body of the city of Staten is in favor of a regional airport?
Yes,
Is
that
that
is
correct?
That is correct. No money. We're presently going to, there's other gentlemen who are going to other communities in the Lynn, Benton, Marion, Polk counties to get letters of support from those communities, and it's been actually quite welcomed. The city of Salem has an agenda item next week, Monday night, with the airport group in the meeting, so it'd be interesting to take a look at that.
Ron, excuse me.
Yes, Mayor.
Do we know what Delta SkyWest would want to come back to Salem
I do not know that.
besides money?
Right now, there is an airport terminal there. It hasn't been used, and the price of oil went to $155 a barrel when the recession started in 2008. The aircraft weren't very economical to operate, for one thing. However, the passenger rate was really quite high. And most of the time on weekends where there was a lot of travel, the aircraft were filled. Now, with the new jets and quieter jets and more fuel-efficient jets, it's actually looking to be a whole lot better now, and both United and Delta are doing that.
Okay, good. All right, thank you. Mr. Kay.
Greetings. Is there any chance we could get Seaport to come back to us? I know Seaport's still running the Pendleton service, aren't they? And they were running out of McNary in 2011. That's the boutique airline that's flying out of the
Yes, that,
executive jet terminal up at PDX.
I do know of the company. I don't know any statistics on it. And I can only say that the people who did use it were business people who were moving around the state, and it was quite convenient for them to use.
For a $29 ticket each way, it was great. I find myself on a plane almost weekly going to Spokane or south, and I loved them when they were here, but sadly they're gone. And I guess that the major airlines are asking for $1.7 million to bring service back.
Well, right now, I believe that the group is looking at $2 million to put together for that, because the airlines won't come into a city, and just because you say, come on in, and they're going to use their own money, it doesn't quite work that way. However, the people who do put the money into and get the matching funds to come in, if the revenue is regenerated by the airlines, all those folks are going to get their money back. That's as I was told. I have a piece here that has the trail, and I'll give you that. It talks about the process all the way through, about making a pledge, the grants, the ROAR program, the grant, and that'll better define it. I can't do that because I don't know much about it, other than I do like the airline coming back. It's quite convenient, to say the least. The other item, too, that I was looking at was when you take a look at the 1.1 million destination or departing passengers, 93% go through PDX, 5% go through Eugene, and 2% go to Seattle. They drive by their car. So with those people in the 4 counties, Marion, Polk, Lynn, and Benton counties, there's quite a few people moving around. So it's an interesting set of facts, and there was a group of business leaders who put up money to have Valair Consulting come in and say, would it work in Salem? And the answer is yes. So what we want to do is tell the city of Salem that the surrounding communities would support airline service out of there. Again, it wouldn't be a whole lot of flights. I mean, I don't think there'd probably be more than, 4 or 6. And this 2 summers ago, when I was at Salem, I was surprised to see a Boeing 737 sitting in front of the terminal. And I asked around and found out that Carrie Underwood came in for a country western program somewhere out here. And I went, oh, so the 737s can come in. So at this point, I would say I'm going to conclude here, and I'll give you the other information on the ROAR program and the grants and how that works.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I used to take that flight to Salt Lake when SkyWest did it. It was, yeah,
Yes, and that's always a possibility.
hour and a half, you were ready to connect to something else. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, thank you, Ron. The next one, Patty Armstrong from 2155 Nighthawk in Staten wants to talk to us about something. So, Patty, is everyone here back there? Okay, want to make sure, because tend to go quiet sometimes.
I'd much rather be here to talk about airplanes and flying to Las Vegas. My name is Patty Armstrong. I live at 2155 Nighthawk Avenue in Staten, Oregon. Chief, nice to see you again. Please don't take anything personally that I'm about to say. But the last few days have been a little bit too much for me, and I cannot not be here. The drug house in our neighborhood is riled up again. Things are being stolen. Guys are sitting in their cars shooting up. I have pictures of them. There were people on my street last Thursday out of their minds. The gal had just left the drug house, according to one of my neighbors. That day, I had 2 events with the police department over drugs being sold out of that house. I have pictures of them. I talked to them personally. They were on my street alone in that neighborhood. The first house is about to have their 4th child. The middle house has 2 children. And I have a 7-year-old right here. I want everybody to see her picture because I'm trying to save her life. I wanted to bring her down here so you could see her in person, but I don't want her exposed to this. I am the mother of 2 adopted children who were born fetal alcohol syndrome. Is anybody in here, have anybody in your family that has a drug issue? Or a child that was born with fetal alcohol syndrome? Anybody? No? Anybody out here? I could tell you stories you don't want to believe. My little girl, I became a foster parent when I retired. From Miller, Nash, Wiener, Hager, and Carlson in Portland as an investigator. I have a daughter that's 48 that was born with drugs and alcohol. In those days, they didn't know what fetal alcohol syndrome was. I thought that love and nurturing and good food and hugging would fix her. It didn't. I don't have any contact with my daughter today because she's dangerous. Her brain is destroyed. She started when she was 12 years old. And she will never be normal. I dealt with the police department in Jervis for years. They would call me and tell me she's in trouble. I begged them to arrest her. They were at her house every day. They knew she was driving an uninsured car. They knew she was driving stoned out of her ever-loving mind. They knew she was dangerous and they did nothing. I am doing my best to pay the interest alone on money that I put out to put her in one of the best drug treatment facilities in the United States. She's been in every drug facility in Oregon, throughout the state, in Texas, and in California. Nothing helps her. This little girl was born with drugs and alcohol. 26 weeks, 1 pound, 10 ounces. Every organ in her body was destroyed. She had a brain bleed. She's had multiple eye surgeries. She had heart surgery. She was in the ER last week because her heart and her blood pressure exploded on her. She was just recently evaluated with permanent brain damage, fetal alcohol syndrome, and ADHD. I am going to be 70 years old on Friday, and I have a lot of work to do before I pass on to make sure this little girl loves herself and can deal with the realities of life. I've been told by both of her doctors that she has special needs and her problems will get worse every year. I have to do everything in my power to help her now. I have to do everything in my power to help your children, your grandchildren, your children, and your grandchildren, and I'm mad. Those people Thursday were on my street. I walked outside to pick up some decorations that were in the yard, and I saw them riding a bicycle, acting crazy. I knew they were stoned. How do I know that? Because I've dealt with my oldest daughter for 40 years with drug issues. I know what shooting up looks like. I know what it does to your brain. I got in my car to go get my little girl from school, and I stopped and talked to these people. I want you to realize they are in front of these houses that have little children. And I said, gosh, I was very nice, gosh, are you guys new to the area because I've never seen you? They were on a bicycle, and he said, no, we're just jogging through. Bicycles in the middle of the road. They're on the corner of Nighthawk making out. And I said, well, just so you know, everybody in this neighborhood keeps an eye on anybody we don't know because there's a drug house in this neighborhood and we don't like it. Oh no, a drug house. Oh man, we're nice people. I said, the police are here all the time, and I thank you for that again, Chief. The police are here all the time, so if you don't want to be known associated with a drug house, perhaps you need to get out of the neighborhood. Oh, well, I don't know how to get out of here. I said, that way. That way. Go.
Charlene, what else can we do?
I'm not done.
Okay, but we've got a lot more to do tonight.
Yeah, I know you do. I didn't realize there would be an audience. But maybe some of these people can learn by what I'm saying. What you guys need to know is if the second thing that happened Thursday was I needed to run to the store when my husband got home. Ran to the store, there's a yellow Volvo sitting there at the corner. I turned around and I looked right in at the car, and the guy's like this. I know what shooting up looks like. I turned around, took a picture of his car, and I left. Went to the store, I only needed 2 items, came back down Kendall, policeman sitting there. By the way, on the first group, I called the police. They can't do anything because they weren't doing anything illegal. I was told they were known to be at the house in question, but they can't do anything because they weren't doing anything illegal. So I stopped and talked to the police with the second situation. Yellow Volvo still sitting there. He said, yeah, but when I came around the corner, he got out and walked around like he was going to visit somebody. I have 7 kids at my house playing outside. I drove on home and made sure each one of those kids got in the house. I took 2 of them and talked to their dad. I don't want to tell my daughter she has to stay in the house because of drug people. We've already experienced it over the last, 3 years with them coming behind our house and on our property. That's not fair. My little girl and my neighbor's children and everybody else's children has a right to grow up in safety. The Jervis police used to tell me, we can't arrest your daughter because she has rights. What about our rights? What about our children's rights? I don't get it. There may be something that you guys are doing that I don't understand, but when there is stolen vehicles and stolen tools and stolen property found on that property, why aren't they being arrested? If the question is because they'll let him out of jail like they did Scott, put up some tents. Put them in tents. They don't belong out on the street. And I'll tell you something else I think is going on in that house. Kylie's there alone with a bunch of men. Her dad is there. I tried to save this young girl and I had to walk away because I can't. She's 19 years old, she's this big around, and she's got track marks up her arms. I don't have a clue what that's like. I never got involved with drugs or alcohol. She's gonna die in that house. People that are living there are men. She has been hurt by her father. Her father is a criminal and he has taken over that house. It's not even her house anymore. They party all night and they sleep during the day. I am this close to calling TV stations in Portland to see if they can come down here and visit with us about this situation.
Charlene, are you getting the help you can or that we can do from Chief, right? Our police department is entirely cooperative whenever you've called.
Oh, yes. And they drive through there all day, but they're active at night. Drug addicts are active at night. They're up all night. And they sleep during the day. During the night, there's activity behind us with the police. We hear it. There's nobody that lives behind us. There's only 3 houses on Nighthawk. It's empty behind us. That's where, when they find somebody at the drug house or the police are out there, those guys, most of them are men, some of them are girls, run to the back field down behind our house into where the trailer court is, thanks to me.
Charlene, we're going to have to move on.
I know, I get it.
Conclude very quickly, and I apologize for having to cut you off, but we just have a lot to do tonight.
I understand that. I'll be back.
Okay.
I'm not going to let this drop.
Okay.
And it's not just because of my daughter.
Okay, we're here every 2 weeks, and
I know.
we'll listen.
Would you guys get together? I don't know what the council's job is. I looked at your goals. There's nothing on here about there's neighborhood preservation. Preserve our neighborhood. That's all we ask. I got stopped and got a ticket the other day. The policeman knows who I am because of the drug house. And so as he gives me a ticket, he says, you know what, Patty? You were going X mile an hour over the speed limit, and that's illegal, and I can't let you get away with anything illegal. Wrong thing to say to me, because selling drugs is illegal too.
Okay.
I thank you for your time, and I hope something can happen before somebody gets hurt. Because if anybody hurts any of those kids on that street, I'm going to be the one in jail because I'm going to hurt somebody.
Okay.
Our children don't deserve this.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Patty. Okay. Oh, all right. That was that part of presentations, comments from the public. Consent agenda, before we jump into that public hearing.
I move we accept the consent agenda as presented.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor?
A motion to approve the consent agenda as presented. Is there a second?
Yeah, second.
Okay, a motion and a second. No discussion. All in favor, say aye, please. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Hearing none, we'll declare the consent agenda approved as submitted. Next thing this evening is a public hearing. and it's to review ordinance number 1019, amending the state and municipal codes Title 6, 8, and 15, promoting maintenance of buildings and public spaces, and I have to read a script, so bear with me for a minute here. Good evening, my name is Henry Porter. I'm the mayor of the city of Stayton, and I'll be presiding over this hearing. This is the time and place set for the public hearing in the matter of City Council's review of ordinance number 1019. This ordinance was enacted in June 2018 by the City Council in order to promote the maintenance of buildings and public spaces in the city. The regulations enacted by the ordinance affect mostly the downtown area of the city, including North First Avenue from Water Street to Washington Street. This evening's hearing is the result of a number of concerns that have been brought to the council's attention. There is no proposal for amendment or repeal of the ordinance before the council. The purpose of this evening's hearing is to provide an opportunity for the council to hear from those who support or oppose the provisions in the ordinance. The hearing is now open. This is not a land use hearing, so the hearing will be conducted in accordance with general hearing procedures of the City Council's rules. The hearing will begin with a staff report. I will then ask the public to provide testimony. Everyone who participates is asked to start their presentation by introducing themselves by name, giving any affiliation and their address. Participants are requested to limit their comments to 3 minutes and are further requested to avoid repetition. If someone else has already expressed your thoughts, it's perfectly all right to simply state agreement with the statements of the previous speaker. If there are any documents, maps, or letters that you wish to have considered by the council, they must include the submitter's name and address and must be signed, dated, and formally placed into the record of the hearing. To do that, either before or after you speak, please leave the material with the Deputy City Recorder at the staff table. The recorder will make sure your documents are included in the record. I think there's more. At this time, I'd ask the audience if there are any objections to the notice that was provided for this hearing. Steve?
I think we sent a letter expressing our concern.
Steve?
Okay. So there was an objection. All right. To the jurisdiction of the City Council to hear and consider this issue? No? None? Okay. Are there any declarations of conflict of interest, ex parte contact, or bias by any member of the council?
You have those already, Mr. Mayor?
What's that?
You have those already, Mr.
I have those. All right. We are ready for the staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Are you going to? Okay.
Enclosed, and there are copies in the back of the room as well, is the staff report and memorandum regarding this issue. There are numerous enclosures that are also included, so I would recommend people to look at those enclosures as well. The efforts were made to try to provide documents and the information that would be necessary to consider this matter. I don't think it's appropriate or necessary to necessarily regurgitate the totality of my staff report, the background information, but there's a few things I would like to briefly discuss. And just to highlight from my staff report, I did ask the City Council to suspend the enforcement of Ordinance 1019 and to reconsider the matter based on feedback that we had received at numerous City Council meetings and based on feedback that staff had received from downtown businesses. I had seen two significant policy concerns that I felt were critical that we address as a governing body. The first was the downtown businesses were not properly notified or provided a proper forum for consideration of their thoughts and concerns prior to the City Council consideration and passage of Ordinance 1019. Specifically, the 4 downtown bars that were most directly impacted were not contacted prior to the passage of Ordinance 1019. Second, I think there was a valid argument of the equity, specifically why there would be an inequity between the rules and requirements for downtown businesses designated in the downtown and businesses located in other segments of our community. The governing body clearly has the authority and the right to set different standards and procedures, but I think it's appropriate in the final decision to document or to justify what those inequities would be and why the downtown area should be treated differently if it is to be so in other areas.
City staff wrote a memo that was sent to the downtown stakeholders. There was 97 letters that were sent on October 9th. Enclosure of that letter is part of the enclosures of the memorandum. We also had a staff member attempt to contact downtown businesses, and I was notified that about the same number of businesses received a copy of the letter from this contact. I feel that this time we've covered and provided the information, and staff is ready to answer any questions, and so I'll turn it back over to you, Mayor.
Mr. Mayor?
Go ahead.
I'd just like to make note for the record that my name is mentioned in this memorandum several times, and it, in my estimation, is mentioned inaccurately. Don't know if Mr. Campbell and I just have a totally different memory of what occurred, but I did want to make note that I totally disagree with what he has written in this regarding any conversations that him and I had.
Mr. Mayor, I echo several reservations like Councilor Glidewell has. So,
Okay. So we have reservations on the memo. Let me ask the audience, how many of you had a chance to read that memo? Okay? All right? And you can substantially agree or disagree with it, I guess, but it reflects probably the feelings of a majority of the council at this point.
Mr. Mayor,
I
you can't say
would
that.
disagree.
The council as a whole voted to suspend enforcement. The council as a whole has questions and reservations. That's a rather broad-based statement, Mr. Mayor. It doesn't, there are a lot of issues and sub-issues here. That is,
Well, of course there are.
okay, but is this 1015 or 1019? I mean, I can go into them. I've got lists of them, Mr. Mayor, but
Well, I think it
If
says
it's at the
1019.
time?
It's 1019.
how come how come number 2 is 1015?
All right.
I mean,
Well, then, let's see,
Because that was previous.
where's our,
it has nothing to do with 1019.
what's the next thing? So we got a staff report. Questions from the council, there have been a couple of statements. Anyone else on the council have anything to say at this point? Otherwise, let's go to some public comments.
Well, Mr. Mayor, I hope we can come back because we have lots of things to say.
Well, we will.
Okay.
All right. So let's do some public testimony. Let's start with, let's just go through the list here. And there's a lot of general, there's opposition. Let's start with Charlene Vogel. Is that right? The lady with the dance studio downtown.
Lady with Dance Studio,
And the cameras.
279 North 3rd Street.
Okay.
Took possession about 4 months ago, and I was under the impression that
Okay.
there is a,
Yeah.
is that better?
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm better at dancing for you rather than speaking.
Go ahead.
But I was under the impression that there was a smoking ban, and I wanted a clean, safe environment for my students and families to walk through, and it is not being enforced. And my lobby is constantly filling up with the smell of smoke, and families are complaining about not feeling very safe, having to walk through the loiterers, just standing outside smoking. Storm drains are full of cigarette butts, and it's just not like a clean, wholesome environment for my students. And I would hope that we could create that. So that's kind of all I have to say.
Okay, thank you. Emily, where are you, Emily? Thank you.
All right, hello. My name is Emily Connor. I am RDS's rare participant for this year. As I am still new to the community, I don't have much personal input to add to this, but we did receive a couple of memos from people who were not able to make it this time due to having kids or being out of town. So I was just going to read a couple of those. So our first one comes from Jessica. We received this memo on October 10th. That was a Wednesday. She says, As far as the ordinance goes, I would love to see downtown Staten clean and smoke-free. I do believe it is still against the law for anyone to smoke within 10 feet of a business entrance and exit. That includes the bars. Walking down 3rd Street, most of the doors of these businesses are within 20 feet of each other, 10 feet from each doorway. The fact that the city lifted the ordinance after some complaints is disappointing. From my point of view, the city just sided with the smokers.
Is there a last name on that?
There is not. The last name was withheld from that one, unfortunately.
Emily, what was their conclusion again, the last part there?
From my point of view, the city just sided with the smokers.
Okay, go ahead
Alright.
with the next
And what
one.
was the first name on that?
Jessica.
The last name.
Yeah, no last name on that one, unfortunately. The next one comes from Will Myers. We received this October 11th. That was a Thursday. Will says, I would like to voice my support for the ban of the smoking on the sidewalks, as I personally know that I don't like walking through someone's cloud of smoke. Not to mention the state ordinances that smoking should be at least 10 feet from any entrance into a public establishment. I'm surprised this has been so difficult, considering the majority of people that don't want to be around other people's cigarette smoke. I have moved the smoking area for my tenants off the sidewalk back away from the public thoroughfares. Most smokers even understand that other people don't want to walk through their smoke. I hope this issue can get resolved so to encourage more families to patronize the downtown area. Isn't that what we all want? Thank you for your efforts. And that's signed Will Myers.
Okay. And I have a letter from him also. so-
All right.
Okay.
Last one comes from John Money, who's on vacation. We got this on Thursday, October 25th. John wrote to us, Judy and I are sending this email to add our support for the new city ordinances. We believe these will have a long-term positive effect on the future of the historic downtown area. We understand there is concern about the ban on smoking on the streets. This is a concern for primarily one business. RDS is talking with the business owner, and we believe with the city's help, a solution can be worked out to help the business comply without it being a hardship on the business or its patrons. In fact, we think the solution will provide a better setting than standing out on the sidewalk in all kinds of weather. It's signed John and Judy Money.
Okay,
And that is all I have for that.
Mr. Mayor, should we have,
all right.
Thank you for your time.
Just a minute. Go ahead, thank you, Emily.
does Emily need to give them to, she needs to give them to Elizabeth?
I don't know.
Yes.
Could we have those, Emily, could we have those? Now, this is going to go back and forth. There's no particular order to these, although we tried, but then there were more came in, so. Samantha Jones from 255 3rd Street in Staten.
Yes, sir. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Samantha Jones. I'm here on behalf of the bar Mick and Mom's. I would like to come out and say that I strongly oppose the smoking prohibited section, excuse me, my throat is sore, section of Ordinance 1019. I have spoken out on this issue many times for many months. This portion of the ordinance is a gross intrusion into the personal lives and residents of this wonderful town. People who live in small towns do so because they like the intimacy that it provides. We like knowing our neighbors, watching each other's kids grow, and waving while we walk down the street. Having an intrusive city government, however, is something no one desires. Bars in the area would be the most adversely affected by this ordinance. With the majority of the customers and staff being smokers, you are looking at large reductions in profits. The economy has finally picked back up, and our town is doing well. It makes no sense to jeopardize that progress with something so trivial. Banning outside public smoking benefits no one. Using the excuse of making our town more family-friendly is a play on words. Our town is family-oriented, and tobacco users aren't out to surround them with giant plumes of smoke. In fact, only 17% of Americans smoke cigarettes, and research has shown transient outdoor smoke has no health effects, none. While I can admit that walking past them may be unpleasant for those brief 5 seconds on a sidewalk, it's no more irritating than someone's strong perfume or cologne. 92% of Americans wear fragrances. So if you're going to start banning things based on olfactory nuisances to the public, I suggest that you start with those. In the meantime, however, I would ask that this city council not try to act as a health guru or moral guide. Allow the residents of Stayton to be treated as though they're capable of self-ownership. After all, I highly doubt there are any tangible benefits to this section of the ordinance. Has anyone thought of any potential side effects of this smoking ordinance? It could be huge for our city. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, quick question, please.
Go ahead. Samantha, would you take a question?
Sure.
Sam, are you aware that this council has no ability to supersede state law?
Yes, I am.
Okay, is your current place of employment in compliance with state law?
Yes, we are.
That includes the folks that are smoking outside the building right now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
All right. James Taylor, please. Thank you, Sam.
Okay, evening, council. James Taylor, I'll just say 210 East Water Street. First off topic, thank you, Lance and Public Works, on fixing a lot of the potholes around in the downtown area. I'd like to thank you there. I'll mix it up a little bit and skip away from the smoking for a minute. My problem with some of the ordinance has to do with the debris part of it. Running an automotive shop, whether it be mechanical or body shop, you do end up with scrap parts left over that collect up until you have a quantity that justifies taking it to, Cherry City Metal, something like that. So you're trying to run as green as possible, recycle. The way the rules read, the ordinance, the fact of being seen from whether it be the street, an adjacent property, alleyways, anything like that, basically states that there's no place you can keep it unless you keep it inside the building, which ends up taking up valuable space overall. The other option is constantly throwing it away. So whether it be fenders, hoods, engine blocks, I agree. Keep it clean, make it look presentable, to the public eye, from the front of the building, that aspect. When you start saying from any adjacent property, is that saying if you're looking through a fence, over a fence, things like that, pretty soon you're to a point where you're really becoming, I hate to use the word, almost like a homeowners association trying to, police all the businesses. Don't get me wrong with RDS. I want to see the town beautified, business, blossoming, everything. We're currently in the middle of trying to expand. I've got a meeting later this week. I sat there and I started reading this and I started getting fired up this evening going, do I really want to expand? Do I want to think about going somewhere else? It's not what I want to do, but I thought about it for a moment. So I wasn't going to speak tonight, but I decided I wanted to put in my 2 cents on that aspect of, when you start discussing debris. I mean, as long as you can keep it confined, into an area, keep it, don't pile it up out in front of the building, stuff like that, because you don't want to make it look distracting to people coming into the town, wanting to come downtown. That's most of what I would like to say tonight. Like I say, I do appreciate what RDS is trying to do. I was downtown Salem this weekend. One thing that caught my eye was names on top of each building, stating what the building was, or, whether it be what it used to be called or who originally built it. It was sort of attractive and interesting. Just thought.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, James. Any questions for James? Most of these things are complaint driven, James. Anyone complained about piles of extra car parts?
I have not gotten any, complaints.
Then you must
Directly.
be doing a pretty good job of taking care of that stuff.
Try to. I mean, I on the other hand, I looked at it sort of in a way myself tonight, objectively, looking outside of, if it was somebody else looking at what I'm doing. And I sort of thought about, okay, I probably should do something with that, and that, And I thought, okay, I need to do that on my own list.
Okay. Flower beds and the bent fenders.
I've thought about bringing in, I got a 23 Willys sitting out back, a little body that, I could put it out front, make a flower bed.
There you go. I like it. Beautify. All right. Thank you, James. James McGrory.
Thank you, Mayor. My name is James McGrory, and I'm a private citizen. Okay. I wish to speak in opposition to the ordinance 1019, the smoking ban particular. Over the summer, those in opposition have presented 160 signatures opposing this. And we were told, well, we had a lot of representation of people that wanted it. We asked for documentation. None was provided. We asked for meetings to discuss this. None were provided. I have a letter here as part of the agenda that you all have. I'm not sure all the audience has. That lays it out pretty well exactly what brings us to this day. It's about 2 pages and I want to read it so they know where in the hell we're at. Following the passage of Ordinance 985, which addressed the city's sign code in August 2015, Councilor Priscilla Gladwell approached city staff with a list of proposed ordinances for the downtown. It was said the ordinances were necessary to improve the downtown and were taken from the city of Silverton, and by correlation, to have a successful downtown, the code revisions were a requirement. The proposed ordinances were internally named the Silverton ordinances. Staff advised that the ordinances were aggressive and potentially controversial, suggesting it would be better if such proposal come from downtown business and not from the city. Staff spent significant time building and establishing the latest attempt to revitalize the downtown area. There have been at least 2 prior attempts to coordinate downtown efforts, both of which failed. In the community, there was a lot of doubt and skepticism about the new effort would succeed where the others have failed. It was critical for the new effort to build trust and positivity and look for ideas and programs that were carrots and not hammers. It was clearly expressed to Friends of Downtown State and then RDS that their mission should be build up political and social capital and to be a positive force, not pursuing aggressive or potentially divisive actions. It was also strongly felt by city staff the focus shouldn't be on to legislate our way to excellence, but rather to look for positive projects and positive incremental changes.
James?
The Silverton
James?
ordinances were...
No! We're going to hold it right there. It's going to take you a half an hour to read all that.
Maybe they don't have a...
Well, I asked earlier, how many of the folks had read that?
Maybe they
There are
don't have
copies of
that.
it back there at the back table.
Huh?
And it,
If you
yeah,
don't have a copy, grab one from her.
Where you want to read one, Roger? I say my spiel?
James,
it's just going to take
thank you,
us
James.
way too long to
Well, what
go.
I'm trying to get at,
Okay, very quickly, summarize where you want to be, please.
you're not allowing me to speak?
You got your 3 minutes, whichever one does,
May I finish?
yes, but not reading that whole
Thank you,
thing.
sir. May I finish?
Yes.
That's what we're going against. The Friends of Old Town State and now Revitalize Downtown State provided a cover letter and copy of the proposed general building codes for downtown state. And comments from representatives, ideas, and developed by the design committee. The ordinances were, for all practical purposes, the Silverton ordinances. They had previously been presented to the city by Councilor Glidewell. On January 16, 2018, the first page Silverton orders were brought before the governing body. Ordinance number 1015 was presented and passed by the governing body. This section of the Silverton ordinance dealt with land use matters, specifically related to Title 17 State and Municipal, and worked to establish color schemes for the building standards and awnings and such. The item had been considered and recommended by the planning commission. At the March 19th meeting,
James,
RDS brought forward...
James, enough. We're not going to be able to go through this whole thing. Can you make a concluding statement and then go ahead and we'll let somebody else talk?
I can't believe you won't let a man speak. What I'm trying to say is, who runs this city? RDS or the city council?
It's a fair
And
question.
he stated at the bottom line is that the recommendation is that retain ordinance as it is, direct the staff to prepare an ordinance to amend or to repeal smoking ban 1019. I recommend you repeal the smoking ban from 1019.
All right.
Okay, you get my drift?
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you for not letting me speak, Mayor.
That's all right. You got through a lot of it.
Yeah.
You got through more than anyone else, so
I can't
enjoy.
believe you wouldn't know American speak.
I'd let you speak.
God. Who runs this city? RDS or you?
Well, it's
Citizens.
a shared, the citizens of the community run it. Thank you, James.
her, or RDS?
Thank you, James. Steve?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
You gotta let the new people know what they're walking into.
Okay. Thank you, James. Steve?
Yes, my name is Steve Poison, and I am the Vice President of Revitalize Downtown Staten. I live at 1750 East Pine in Staten. This is Mr. Yi Wu, who is the owner of Mick and Mom's Pub and Eatery, and the owner of the property where it is located at 255 3rd Avenue in Staten. Mr. Wu has asked that I speak on his behalf as well as for RDS, so my comments will apply to both of us. Several members of RDS have spoken with Mr. Wu and his manager Samantha since she first brought her concerns about their smoking patrons to council in April, and we believe we have a reasonable solution to their concerns. Whether or not the council decides to uphold the smoking ban or not, we both feel smoking in front of businesses in the downtown area is unattractive and not pedestrian friendly. We both advocate for another option. However, Mr. Wu's property is a unique situation. Since his building extends from the edge of the front sidewalk to the edge of the rear alley, it leaves no alternative space for his smoking patrons to congregate. If the council is willing to work toward its stated goal of supporting merchants and RDS, they can solve the problem by adjusting the language of Ordinance 1019 that states there's no smoking on any city property. If Mr. Wu was given the use of a single, underused parking space across the alley from his business, whether by writing an exception into the ordinance, leasing the space to him for $1 per year, or through another method, it would provide a space for his customers to smoke behind his business. RDS would provide a canopy and a bench for this space so it would be usable in any weather. Mr. Wu would take responsibility for keeping it clean. We see the situation as unique enough that it would not present any precedent, other than one that says the city is willing to work with merchants and citizens when unique situations exist that do not conform to existing ordinances. Whether your decision on the smoking ban portion of Ordinance 1019 is for or against, we hope you will work with Mr. Wu and grant his request for the use of the single parking space in the northeast corner of the municipal parking lot. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Steve.
That's not party to this, Mr. Mayor, but it's a good idea.
Oh, wait a minute now. Just wait. Whoa.
It's a city-owned parking lot.
Let's get through this.
City-owned lot.
Yeah.
It's no problem, it's a great idea.
The only problem with that is when I open my business down there and I need a parking lot, what are you going to say to me?
Let's get through the comments.
Let's get through these things. Mr. Richard Lewis.
Here.
Did you have Hank as a teacher?
Hello. My name is Richard Lewis. I live at 1890 Westminster Place here in Staten. Mr. Mayor, council members, staff, ladies and gentlemen. I've read Mr. Campbell's synopsis of the somewhat distorted pathway this measure has taken to arrive, once again, for your reconsideration. My purpose in coming before you tonight is to encourage you to retain the smoking ban contained in this measure. This is not a matter of business profit or customer inconvenience, but a matter of health for children and other members of our non-smoking community, whether local or visiting, and who wish to stroll downtown. Tobacco smoke, whether drifting up from the end of a cigarette or a cloud exhaled from the lungs of a smoker, is harmful. This fact is amply documented by the American Cancer Society and the Center for Disease Control on their websites. There are some 7,000 chemicals in cigarette smoke, many of which are toxic to smokers and non-smokers alike. Mr. Campbell's memorandum provides you with 3 choices relative to this entire measure, and I would suggest you consider a couple of options pertaining to the secondhand smoke provision, since it has become such a contentious issue. 1, retain the requirement and invite the Oregon Health Authority, which is charged with administration and enforcement of the Indoor Clean Air Act, to give a seminar for those businesses that are affected. There may simply be a lack of information or understanding by our business community. Or 2, remove the requirement from the measure and allow the community to decide whether they want a secondhand smoke-free zone in this area by putting it as a measure on the May ballot. Thank you. Do you have any questions?
Okay. I don't, Richard, but thank you very much. Anyone else? Okay. Greg Olson, please.
It's Greg Olson. I live at 6499 Stage Line Lane in Salem. I own 2 properties on 3rd Avenue. We've been working for a number of years fixing the Dietrich building. I'm an author of the nomination, the multiple property submission. I thought maybe I could give a perspective, which is that this is not a sprint. Making the downtown is a long-term project, and I think carrots are better than hammers, and I think compromise is good, and I'm uncomfortable with pitting preservation against smoking. I think some things work better than others. Telling people what color to paint their buildings is pretty hopeless, and telling people that they can't smoke is at least hard. I think the compromise that was stated a few minutes ago is wonderful, and you should try to work with it. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Greg. Dan Morgan.
Mr. Mayor, this isn't the ordinance that I was wanting to talk about.
Okay.
I could speak at the end of the meeting on...
Okay, we'll come back.
I'll agree to do that.
Okay. We'll have another comments from the public at the end here, Dan. Thank you. Mr. Booth, Jerry?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. My name is Jerry Abood. I reside at 836 East Cathy Street in Stayton. I own property in downtown Oregon. I have a couple things. First of all, I want to talk, I see most people are addressing smoking. I also have a concern about awnings and paint colors. And I would speak to those things if you like as well, but I don't know if you're focusing on smoking tonight.
It's 10:19.
It's included. Mr. Mayor, I'd like to hear what he has to say.
Yeah,
please.
go ahead, Jerry.
Okay, well, let me start with the smoking, as long as that's where we've been. To begin with, you know, there are 2 governmental bodies dealing with the smoking laws. One, of course, is the state of Oregon, which bans smoking within 10 feet of doorways. I think that's clear. I think whatever state in Oregon chooses to do, that law remains. As far as I'm concerned, there's no arguments to support no arguments tonight should be supporting allowing smoking in this venue, because it's not appropriate, because the state has already preempted that. If the city of Stayton is dealing with their own ordinance that in fact expands the current ordinance, in fact expands the state of Oregon's but I think what the city has currently done only marginally affects what's going on 3rd Avenue as far as the smoking goes. It reminds me, by the way, I want to just say, it reminds me of an old saying about listen without defending and speak without offending. And I'm going to try and speak without offending. But currently, I think we all agree there's lots of smoking going on 3rd Avenue, specifically between Florence and Ida Street, where the state law says it shouldn't be going on. And that can be enforced currently, according to the OHA, by either emailing them or calling them. and they will send out enforcement people after they've received 2 complaints. And they have a whole process for doing this.
Right.
And my first comment would be actually my specific comment to that would be people that are not in favor of the smoking that's going on, which they believe is illegal, and I believe most of it is, should contact the OHA and start filing complaints. And they will come out, according to what they say, they will come out and deal with the issue. But they won't come out unless there's 2 complaints, from my understanding. I wouldn't suggest everybody gets together and do this. Just if you feel strongly about it, call them. The amount of smoking and the size of the groups on that sidewalk area is detrimental to the downtown. That's my belief as a longtime property owner. I haven't owned property on 3rd Avenue very long, but I've owned it on 3rd for quite a few years. On 2nd, excuse me. Dan's map showing the 10 feet from the doorway and explaining where smoking is illegal or legal is very helpful, except it's a little confusing sometimes because it looks like you have 1 to 2 feet between some of these 10-foot exclusions that you could stand, and I would suppose you could stand like this and smoke and be legal.
Turn sideways.
Turn sideways.
There you go.
Okay, and can do that. But, I think it seems to me that if the city ought to continue doing some type of smoking ban in addition to the OHA, just to make it clearer. So you know where right now you're not quite sure where the 10 feet starts and stops, and it could be various places along the street. I would just suggest the city makes it easy. Go to 20 feet from the doorway. Says you can't smoke within 20 feet of a doorway. And you're going to eliminate all of those 10-foot spots where you're not sure of. And it'd be very simple to enforce. And you would have 2 enforcement levels at that point. One would be the OHA on the 10-foot, and the city ordinance officers can come around periodically and remind people, even hand them a little flyer and say, this is what is legal and illegal for smoking. And after a few of those flyers, then they may cite somebody if they're not, if the ordinance is not being enforced. And I would make that 20 feet only be on entrances adjacent to the sidewalk. So the 20 feet wouldn't be if somebody's adjacent to a doorway in the back of a building off of an alley, even though that 10 feet from the OHA still applies. So I would recommend that the city do the 20 feet from doorways adjacent to sidewalks. And that's pretty much what I have to say. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Jerry. All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Okay. Alan Meyer.
So my comments are a little bit, Alan Meyer, 2764 East Pine Street, Stayton, Oregon. So my comments are a little bit more, regarding the staff report. And if you haven't read the staff report, I would highly recommend you read all 40-some pages of it. But Mayor, Council, staff, I have come to you as a resident and volunteer here in Stayton. I'm sure that you've all read the staff report authored by our city manager, which basically has nothing to do with the issue at hand tonight, but rather is an all-out attack on revitalized downtown Stayton, full of inaccuracies, exaggerations, and assumptions, with a clear message that the author does not appreciate or respect our many wonderful volunteers, nor the good that we've accomplished in our downtown. We are a group of volunteers whom have put thousands of hours, our own time and money, and resources into making our downtown, or bringing it back to life, making it safe and clean. We have held many fun and successful events and have helped our downtown businesses and building owners with grants and awards. We built the parklet. We participated in downtown cleanup efforts. We've pressure washed awnings, and the list goes on and on. We're a pretty bad group of people. RDS, formerly Friends of Old Town Staten, was formed in late 2015 by the City of Staten, downtown business owners, and residents interested in the effort. RDS has always had participation by an executive city staff on our board. There should be no secrets between the city and RDS because we have their executive on our board. We've had elected officials and we've had city leaders attend many of our board meetings and many of our efforts and events. We are sanctioned by Oregon Main Street, who provides us resources and guidance as we work through the Main Street process to better our collective downtown. We are also supported by the Ford Foundation, AmeriCorps, Pacific Power, BCNS, and many other community partners, including a strong partnership with the Santiam Heritage Foundation. Regarding the ordinances at hand, the city guided RDS through this entire process of both ordinances 1015 and 1019. In fact, RDS had no expertise in the matter of ordinances, and we relied on the city to hold our hand and walk us through the entire process, which you happily did. I also understand that some of our downtown businesses were invited by the city to participate tonight. I'm disappointed that you didn't extend that invitation to all Staten residents, as this downtown is all of ours. It's not just the downtown businesses, this is our downtown. As president of RDS, I am hurt and I am concerned by our city manager's attack on RDS, and as a resident of Staten, I ask you as the leaders of our city, is this the way we run our government? Is this who we are? In closing, I want you to ponder what I've said to you. Is this who we are in Staten? I can answer that with a resounding no. We are better than this, and RDS plans to continue our efforts. And we have some very big opportunities in the next year for our downtown. Our downtown rocks, and it's only getting better. And thank you for your time.
Thank you, Alan. All right, Shannon Turek.
Wow, I get to follow that. Hello, as I said, Shannon Turek, and I own a building at 281 North 3rd Avenue, corner of 3rd and Ida, and I don't have the solutions, but I want to talk about the problem that I have with smoking. I used to operate a business on the corner of 3rd and Ida, and we didn't really have any problem with smoking when we opened. Then around 2008, that law came into effect, and on January 1st, all the smokers got kicked outside, and that's when the problems began. And it didn't, I don't know how to say it, but I mean, obviously there's smoke that comes through the doors. There's no way, everybody complains about enforcement, but it's not reasonable to expect police to enforce something when you got to go 10 feet to one side of the door, 10 feet to the other side of the door. That's right where the awnings end. And if you, basically his drawings that he has are excellent for showing the awnings on my building. And basically there's a 2-foot area between each awning where you can smoke. And as long as there's these little spots where you could smoke, people were guaranteed to smoke. And we could get them out the door. Once they were out the door, they chose to smoke. There wasn't the enforcement. Then I never heard about the RDS rules till after they were passed. And all of a sudden, the rule is that they're not allowed to smoke at all anywhere in downtown. Well, I don't see how you're ever going to enforce a rule like that when you can smoke anywhere else in the city, but downtown you can't. You have to have some kind of logical rule. How you get there, I'm not sure, but you're never going to solve it when you don't have laws that are enforceable. And I think RDS is doing a great job trying to make things better. 1019 is a bad idea. It's not just the smoking. I'll give you another example. Just take the awnings. I had to redo an awning. Somebody slashed my awning, one of my awnings, and that happened a couple months ago. Doesn't sound like a big deal, but every time something like that happens and an awning gets slashed, well, it's a couple grand. and you put this new awning in, and now all of a sudden, somebody else has to approve the awning. It's not the awning that I want, it's the awning that has to be approved. Well, that wasn't a problem. The City of Stayton was fine with what I chose, but if the City of Stayton wasn't fine with what I chose, I wouldn't be paying for what the City of Stayton wanted me to do. That's not going to make downtown better. And while 1019 was very thoughtful, it wasn't done by people who understand the needs of business owners and property owners. Basically, I think you should just start over. Can the whole thing. I think our city administrator is exactly correct. The whole thing should be canned. Just start over. And I think RDS could be involved in that. And I really appreciate what you guys have done. I mean, I haven't been involved in it, but I really do appreciate your efforts. And like what you did with, the idea with Mick and Moms, great idea, and it could be much better. You could do much better. But I think Keith is exactly right. I don't see how you get police to enforce this kind of thing. And I'd just like to see a correction to the whole thing. So I hope you guys will consider just canning the whole ordinance and starting over. Thank you very much.
Mayor, can I ask a question?
Thank you, Shannon.
Mayor, question
Yes.
for him
Sorry.
real quick? So can you just real quickly talk through, like, when you pick the awning color and trying to get the approval, that whole process from beginning to end? Did you buy and then go to get the approval, or did you have to bring somebody in to look at the catalog with you? How did you pick, and how long did it take to get final
We
approval?
selected what we wanted, and we asked Dan if they'd be okay, and he said yes. So it was very simple. It's not that. It's like, let's say that what we wanted wasn't okay with the City of Stayton. Then we would have a problem because we wouldn't pay for it. Similar to an issue we had over a sidewalk, our sidewalk would be much nicer right now than what it is, because the City of Stayton, and the City of Stayton in this case blames the ADA, but the City of Stayton didn't want what we wanted to do with the sidewalk, and a $1,500 project turned into a $6,000 project. And it was a small improvement. It would have specifically been good for handicapped people, and instead it wasn't done at all. That happens all the time. And the more ordinances that we have that are poorly written, the more chance we have of these kind of issues where things, you never really see what happened, but things don't go the right way. And to get things to go the right way, it starts with laws that are written well. And 1019 just wasn't written well. If I went through that with you, piece by piece, it was like a good idea, but not, it doesn't work. That's all I can really.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Anybody else?
Thanks, Shannon. I think we got it.
Okay.
Okay, Wendy Stone.
Wendy Stone, 525 North Myrtle here in Stayton. I'm also the Santiam Heritage Foundation president, Brown House Event Center. I'm here in support of what RDS has put together. Good ideas may not have been executed well. It may mean some revisions, but part of my problem and part of what I want to say that hasn't already been said is I look at the report that we picked up at the back of the room this evening, and I see two very different writing styles in the cover memo on it. I see paragraphs and indications of dates that things happened, and then I see very vague, passively written sentences. When I read a passive sentence, I presume the writer either doesn't know or doesn't want me to know the details. I seriously question the report as I read it now. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Wendy. Okay, That's it for public testimony. At least that's all the green slips that came in. Is there another one back there?
Yeah, maybe speak without having our green slip in, we can kind of like.
Come on up here if you need to say something. I know who you are. This is a former student.
Absolutely. You're my counselor.
I got hundreds of them.
My name's Christina Waters, 40218 Coldview, Sile. Also the owner of Cheers on First, 245 North First Avenue. I just want to say, I think it's great what you're doing with Mick and Moms. I personally feel like this whole smoking ordinance thing, I agree with whoever said it. I think it's directed at Mick and Moms. I don't feel like, I think that the Apple kind of has their little smoking area off the sidewalks. Again, like we spoke before, Cheers does not have any other option other than out front. But my question to you really is, can the police enforce the ordinance if you decide to unsuspend it or whatever, on the private property of the Stop and Save parking lot? Because that is his personal property. So is it from the sidewalk that's out front, or is it his property and the sidewalk in front of Cheers that you would be enforcing?
I don't know.
I don't think I'm not a lawyer, but I don't think it applies to your property because of the way it's set back from the road.
That's kind of the way we felt, but I just kind of want clarification on that. But I do want to say, I hope that you guys do repeal that ordinance and work with the businesses and come up with better options, because people are going to walk up and down a street smoking a cigarette, and I think your whole issue is Mick and Moms out front. So if you could work with the businesses, I think that'd be wonderful.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Thank you. Okay.
The parking lot is private property, so the sidewalk.
Well, it's not a sidewalk.
No, it's not.
Yeah, okay. All right.
We have a hand up.
Public testimony. Another hand back there? Go ahead.
Good evening, Jordan Ort, 885 East Virginia Street. I was looking at the animal waste section of this, and it goes along to enforcement. How are you going to enforce, how are you going to enforce people picking up after their animals? And if they don't, and when I was trick-or-treating with my kids downtown, there was a whole bunch of dog poop left around. But how do you enforce that if people aren't going to pick it up? Then is it the responsibility of the owner of the property that has to do that? Does it specifically say, and how will you enforce that? I think it goes along to the fact of, with the smoking too, how are you going to enforce these things without having a police officer walking around? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jordan. Okay. A lot of it, Jordan, with the animals is just asking people to be good citizens. I mean, it's, you're not, unless you want to follow, I have to follow Gus because he leads me around, but I mean, I don't expect someone else to.
But then why would it only be in that specific area? If it's a big deal and it's something that everybody should do, then shouldn't it be citywide?
There you go.
And I kind of feel the same way about the smoking ban. I'm not necessarily for or against it, but I think if you can smoke here, but you can't smoke here, it's not a really fair.
So there's that equity question that's addressed in that memo.
Certainly.
Yeah. Okay. Counselor.
On dog poop, I live in Water Street on the way into and from a dog park. I'm always picking up poop. Might it behoove us, or could we, and this is a Lance or planning question, we have, at the dog park, we have the little poop bags. Could we put them in more places in the town? So that there's one like on the corner of Water and Third or something, and one on the corner of Virginia, but I mean, I don't know where all the poop, I don't have a dog in this fight. I don't know where all the poop bags are. I know at the dog park, but I know that almost every day I'm picking up dog poop in front of my house. And if we had the poop bags more available, would that go some way to solving the problem?
And we wander on. Yes,
I would
Steve.
just like to clarify that the animal waste
Yeah, Steve, Mr. Passan, microphone.
Yeah, please.
I would just like to clarify that the animal waste portion of ordinance 1019 does apply to the whole city, as it's written.
Okay, all right, thank you, Steve. Okay, done with public testimony. Questions from the council?
I have
Go ahead.
actually a question and I guess a statement. I want to say that my issue with the memo and the stuff from the city has to do with placing blame anywhere. I don't see how that benefits any of us to say whose fault it is or what's happening or where we are now. I think that what we need to do is find solutions for what is currently happening. And whether that be that we start over again with an ad hoc committee that includes downtown business owners, citizens at large, someone from the city, and someone from the council to come together and make some agreements and bring it back to the council, or whatever it is. I love the fact, I don't know whether it can be done or not, but I love the fact that RDS and Mick and Moms got together and came up with at least a positive solution. And I think that that's what we need to look at as a whole, both as the city and as the council, is to, okay, well, in what way can we make positive changes? And if parts of it are not working for businesses, let's support them. So if the automotive shop needs to be able to stack stuff there before he can take it to the metal recycling place, let's not talk about how we can ticket him if he's got it there. Let's talk about how we can help him do that in a way that is pleasing to other people. And I guess I just feel like that document was more of a whose fault is this and let's blame, when I really would hope that the city could have come more from a position of, okay, it obviously is a problem, how do we fix it? How do we come together as a city, as a group, as people who I believe all care about Stayton and the livability of it, and make it a better place? That's all I had to say about it.
Mr. Mayor. Did anyone see any benefit to finally sort of acknowledging how we got here? And it involves saying, Joe and Susie did this, and Billy and Annie did that.
If it were truthful, Mayor, it would be useful.
Well, I have to believe that it is. I mean, I think we're certainly going to take sides on that.
It doesn't really matter, does it?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor,
Now,
can we go through, before we pick it apart piece by piece, Mr. Mayor?
Wait a minute. Sam, did you have something real quick?
Yeah, it doesn't really matter how we got here. It matters that it's a problem and it's hurting businesses and making people angry. What we need to do is come together as adults and make a decision that solves it.
Okay, agreed.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. First of all, I'm perplexed by a number of things, so I'm going to go for them. And I really appreciate Councilor Glidewell and everybody's emphasis on finding positive solutions. So that is going to be how I phrase these things. I'm perplexed as to why this is before council again, because we voted to suspend enforcement and just put it on the back burner for a while. I'm also perplexed that in this document that's here, much of it has to do with this, but some of it doesn't. For instance, it appears as though the author of this document is prejudging the failure of organizations dedicated to trying to help downtown. I don't think anybody in this room is opposed to positive economic development downtown. There may be lots of pathways to get there, but I think we're all in support of that and all supportive, like the mayor said or Sam said, coming together and finding solutions like Mick and Moms and Steve have done. So why are we prejudging the failure of an organization? Secondly, I understand that the city administrator pulled these 18 prominent businesses on our dime and our time, and he investigated the matter, as he says right here. Why do we have a city administrator going out there investigating these things? What good is it? Why, you seem to be, as Wendy said, we have some facts here, and then we have some stuff here that are opinions. Why is that? Who authorized staff to negotiate with FOTS at the time to kill portions of an ordinance? This would be the vacant buildings ordinance. Isn't that something that should come before the governing body rather than be cited by staff? And if this is so bad in its entirety, why did staff bring it forward to the governing body in the first place? Shouldn't staff have bounced it back? And I realize there's some things like fees for food carts and things that need to be bounced back, but if it was as horrible as this document says, shouldn't staff have done their job and vetted it? And then, it bothers me that there's, like Wendy said, two different things here. The ordinance was poorly written. I was the one who's mentioned in this, who, if you will, got on Steve's case about making sure that RDS's outreach was what it said it was, and I think we can all agree the outreach could have been better. I was the one who led that. So I'm not here to defend RDS or what they've done, but I'm also here to say that we need to support organizations who are going to make Stayton better, and that they may be having problems. They may need professional guidance, and I've only been to 2 or 3 meetings, but at each meeting, either our city administrator or manager at the time, or planning or Lance have been in at the meetings. And it needs to be a teamwork effort. And how can we be positive rather than saying, the Silverton ordinances? I mean, aside from the parking meters, I would love for downtown Stayton to look like Silverton. So how can we make that happen? How can we make positivity a reality by working as a team rather than throwing hand grenades at one another? Thank you.
All right.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
Oh, the rich irony of this whole situation. Councilor Conquest says he doesn't know why we're here today. We're here today because when this first came to the council, I asked that, has everything been considered from a standpoint of everyone that has a vested interest downtown? And on numerous occasions when I asked for names and addresses of folks that were contacted to address Ordinance 1019, I was told we need to do a better job in our communication. I was told we don't have those documents. So as a representative for the council, I went and spoke to people downtown who told me I haven't been approached by anybody from RDS. That's why we're here today, because we voted 4-1 initially to pass 1019, even though there were some clearly defined problems with the ordinance.
And Councilor Quigley, as I said...
Well, hold on, I'm not done. I'm not done.
Okay.
Yeah, one at a time, please.
When that took place, it was passed 4-1. And then you saw what really took place. This chamber was filled with folks that hadn't been involved in the process. And that was where my whole objection to the whole thing was. And like Priscilla says, we're trying to find a way to rectify this and come together as a community. That's all I was asking from the beginning, is that everyone had a vested say in what was taking place before this ordinance was crafted and just pushed through without even taking some considerations into place. I asked about the awning piece when saying, so the awning, when the awnings were replaced, what's the illumination portion of it? Does that illumination portion come with a way to measure the lighting on the sidewalk? Or is it just decorative lighting like we have over at one of the properties across the street? There's no standard there. So what's sufficient as far as lighting the buildings? If we look at it, all the awnings that are downtown currently, maybe 3 or 5% of them actually are illuminated at night. So what do? Do we go back and start hammering all these folks saying, guess what, you're in violation of Ordinance 1019? I think we need to all take a breath, calm down for a second, come collectively together like we are today, and work on something that's workable for everybody.
Mr. Mayor, if I can interject, I reached out to Councilor Quigley because after the meeting, I thought what he said, and I led the effort to suspend this thing, and I agree with Councilor Quigley, and I made the wrong vote and told him so. I apologize to him personally for not thinking through to my vote.
Okay.
So we're here today. Let's try to all work together, resolve this, walk through this, and let's see what works and what doesn't work. And what doesn't work, let's change it.
Would you let me say one thing, Councilor Quigley? I'll get up here. So I
It's up to the mayor.
I'm very passionate about this.
We're in questions from the
chair
council.
recognizes you too.
Thank you. So we work with the city through this whole process, Councilor Quigley. From the very beginning, Mr. Campbell said he supported ordinances that applied to the public space but not to vacant buildings. We worked with Dan. Dan is the one that put those in the verbiage that they're in. We only talked about the ideas, okay? We don't write ordinances. We don't pass ordinances. We don't write an ordinance. The city was involved with this from the beginning. Why I'm so passionate about this, Councilor Quigley, is why do I feel like RDS is being thrown under the bus and the city is not taking ownership of their involvement in this? That's what's frustrating to me, and I won't say any more. Thank you.
Fair.
Okay.
So,
All right.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, go ahead.
can we get off the smoking for a minute and I can share some concerns I have about the actual ordinance itself on other topics?
Sure.
Or should we just decide what the council wants to do on the ordinance itself overall?
Why don't we just decide to get rid of the ordinance and start over?
I'll second that motion.
Hold on, let's not make a motion yet.
There's no motion.
I want to, let me step back on the smoking piece again real quick. So I researched the heck out of this thing. And Mr. Aboud's absolutely correct when he says that the Oregon Health Authority Indoor Clean Air Act applies currently to downtown. Our ordinance does do really anything other than define those 12 inches, those 8 inches are the only places within downtown that you can smoke. The enforcement portion of the Oregon Health Authority has it all listed out for you on what to do and what to follow in order to report that and get that business in compliance with the state law. And it's all right here. If you folks want to go take a look, that's pretty in-depth. And not only does it apply to the front of the building, it applies to the back of the building, every entrance, every window that can open, every air intake that's out there to the building. And so Dan's map is absolutely correct. There's only a small portion, maybe 8 inches on there, 10 inches or whatnot, that they could literally smoke in there without being in violation of the state statute. The state statute also calls for putting labels on every front door. It also calls for removing receptacles that are on the public right of way. There's a whole host of stuff that I currently see today that's in violation of this ordinance, this state statute, regardless of our ordinance being in place or not. So there's no way to get around that, folks. So I'd like to, from my perspective, I'd like to really go through this piece by piece with all invested people and try to figure out what's really working here.
We get, every time he comes to the meeting, James asks, and he's right, he asks why we haven't had this meeting. And I keep telling him we're going to, and we finally put it on an agenda, which is tonight. This is it. This is the meeting that we've promised all summer about this issue and these issues. So I need to tell James that, if he's still here.
So is there...
Counselor, go ahead.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead.
So I guess I want to go back to kind of what I said about instead of... I just see it as being, this ordinance as being really wieldy for all of us and all of this. I don't understand why we can't do it in more of an ad hoc committee sort of way with the right representation from each area of our community, getting together, coming to some agreements, and then bringing it back to the council.
Okay. Is there anything else right now before we go to a staff summary?
Mr. Mayor.
Yeah.
I'd just like an opportunity for someone to also speak on the ordinance beside the smoking piece, just so I can get some more feedback. We heard about the awning, we heard about the body parts and the body shop parts in the front yard. There's some other things, but I just want some other feedback about, we talked about the color variation. That color palette for me is a challenge for me. We talked about it. My concern was when you guys first discussed it, and yes, it's been on the books for a long time, point noted. My concern is that people that have brand reputations uphold, say Dunkin' Donuts because it's purple, right? If they wanted to come down and put it in. That's my concern about bringing new business in. Just like Shannon mentioned, it's against maybe the color is concerned, to restore the old buildings, another piece, right? So I'd like to look at that a little bit more, but I want to hear some folks' considerations about the ordinance besides the smoking piece. Mr. Mayor, can I?
Oh, go ahead. Somebody? Jerry, Mr. Abood?
Jerry Abood again. I might make a suggestion here is, I'm in the process of rehabbing a building downtown. It might be interesting for council members to pretend they're rehabbing a building and look at the ordinances and see how they would be treated or how they would treat it. One of them, Brian, you asked about colors. The previous ordinance talked about Steve, help me here. What's the color brightness, or Dan, what do you call it? I'm sorry?
Light reflective.
Yeah, the light reflective value. Previous ordinance had said 60. And then you all changed the ordinance to say 50. Well, if you look at a color chart, and Dan has one, and it shows for each color what the reflective value is. Well, if you go from 60 to 50, you've really eliminated a lot of colors, and the reflective values higher are generally going to be lighter colors. So what we've established is a dark palette in downtown Stayton. And if a person wants to do a two-tone building, which I'm considering doing, it's hard to do with a reflective value of 50. You can do it easily with 60. Those are the kinds of things that when you just talk about 50 or 60 doesn't mean much to people until you start looking at the reflective values on each color. So I would suggest from that standpoint one looks at that. One could also talk about expanding the color chart. I mean, it's pretty restrictive, but you can, if that's the way that you want it, then that's fine. But just recognize the fact you have a very dark color palette. Moving on to awnings, the particular building that I own, the nearest doorway is 10 feet from the sidewalk and does not face parallel to the sidewalk, but perpendicular. The next door opening on the same building is about 24 feet parallel to the sidewalk. My awnings that I want to put up, in my mind, are completely different than what the ordinance talks about. The ordinance is really directed towards awnings that are next to the sidewalk and over the sidewalk. And I'm not so sure that, I don't know how many places have that in downtown, probably not very many. But you have to look at the entire town, in the downtown area, the downtown, to see how those ordinances are affected. And the lighting, I agree with Mr. Quigley on the lighting. How do you measure all of that? And should I have a light on my awning that's 24 feet from the sidewalk? That's what I had to say about, I think that was it on awnings and paints. Those two specific things. Does that help, Brian?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Ma'am? Okay, all right. Yes,
May I just need to correct Mr. Abood's remarks.
Okay. He'll appreciate that.
Not as always, only when you're wrong. The change in the color palette that was enacted in January of 2018 did not change the light reflecting value from 60% to 50%. The code previously read that it shall have a value of 50% or less. And the code currently reads it shall have a value no less than 15 and no more than 50. So there was not a change in the upper range, but it established a lower range of 15 so that it's not a very light white color.
Okay, all right. Before we go to yeah.
The 60 that's crossed out refers to the hue shade of trim colors that used to be in the code and is no longer.
Okay. Did you have something else, sir?
I did, on this particular subject, if I could.
Okay. As a neighbor of our fair city to the west.
Good evening. Ron Sturbit, Salem, Oregon. This area here, like downtown Salem, to me, this would be a historical area, historical district. For the folks who own buildings in here who want to upgrade the style of that old look, let them set the guidelines of the colors. Now, street lights for the city should not exceed 3,500 Kelvin. The 3,500 Kelvin is easy on the human pupil and does not cause glare. The other thing you can look at is full cutoff lighting. That is lighting that is totally shielded to drivers and people walking. These could be lights against the building. I'd recommend that you didn't go anything more than maybe 75 watt equivalent on the up lights. However, the colors I think should be given the owner's priority, I should say, of trying to establish that old look. So for someone who is trying to say you got too much red, too much orange, let the folks who are building that area establish the color, the guidelines, and the architectural appearance, and then let the city go with that. And in that historical district, you can put some restrictions like, we suggest that you don't smoke in our area, a sign on the street on both sides of the historical area. I thank you very much for that. Appreciate it.
If you're going to talk about lighting, we ought to do night sky too.
Yes, we should.
You know, there's always that. That gets more and more involved as you go through all
But
that.
I like 5,400.
Is there
Kelvin. It's
anything,
weird.
anything on a staff summary? And if not, I'm going to close the hearing. Yes.
Thought Shannon had a question.
Hey, Shannon. Ms. Turek, go ahead.
To the microphone.
Please. Keith, were you going to do something on staff summary?
Back to 1019 for a moment.
Okay.
Another issue on 1019, let's say I have a vacancy. In the past, what I've always wanted is to try to get a tenant in that location. And what helps is that they can see a vacancy. When I'm supposed to pretend that I'm selling stuff in my front window, as 1019 requires me to do, that makes it a lot harder to rent a space because people think it's occupied. And when I'm only allowed to put a very tiny sign saying that it's for lease, same problem. And the problem with 1019, the real problem with it is that people that have an interest in 1019 weren't invited to the table. And that's why I would again ask you to trash the whole thing, start over. That would be in the best interest of the city. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Shannon. Keith, is there a staff summary on this?
The concerns that staff had was in relation to the passage of these ordinances and the communication that was done with the downtown businesses. When we started to receive pushback and feedback from downtown businesses that the communication that was done was less than robust, we started to do the research to see if we could confirm those issues. That was the intent of meeting with that and the conversations that we had with the downtown businesses, because we did feel like as a good policy decision it was important for the people who are impacted by this to be the ones who have an opportunity to see what's going to be proposed, to make comments on what the proposal is, and to have a voice before those ordinances are passed. There was a lot of comments tonight. I really don't think it's going to behoove us to comment on them all. I did share the staff report was written by me. It is my voice throughout the entire staff report. The vacant building, what I wanted to share was the conversations we were having privately with RDS as this was communicating and going on. And I spent significant time with RDS members saying I felt like ordinances, especially if they didn't have the buy-in from downtown businesses, would be harmful and damaging and create a political firestorm. I encouraged you on numerous times and spent countless hours talking with you about positive ways we could move forward. Carrots, not hammers, was my comment to you, and let's not legislate our way to excellence. An agreement was struck because I felt like the vacant buildings was completely onerous, that we would support 1015 and 1019 with the agreement that after those passages, we would move forward with positive actions in City Council and RDS and looking for carrots. We spent time talking with you, offering opportunities for budgetary things from 2018 and 2019 that we would put in the budget, looking for those carrots. The concern I had, and the reason I asked the governing body, was the concern I had about it not being properly vetted and properly discussed, I felt was a true statement in talking to downtown businesses. The communication that we were led to believe happened wasn't. That's the correction that I wanted to make. I did take the time to talk about the things that were happening in the background because I thought it was important to detail the actual conversations that were happening with RDS behind the scenes. With that, I'll turn it over to you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Keith. Hearing's closed. Council deliberation. What do you folks want to do with this, if anything, this evening?
Mr. Mayor, I move that Alyssa, how do we withdraw an ordinance or kill an ordinance?
Yeah.
Can we?
A motion to repeal 1015 and 1019?
Let's not do that without putting something else in place. I mean, I would like to make sure that an ad hoc committee is put together with people that have interest in this, like Mr. Aboud said, that somebody that understands what it is to redo a building downtown, so that we're not repealing something without taking, I would like us to not do anything with anything, just leave it where it's at, and ask a group of people that have interest in it, that are representative of everybody that's talked about how they have an interest in it, to see if they can come up with a solution. Whether it be to totally, their recommendation could be that we repeal it. Their recommendation could be that we change parts of it. Their recommendation could be many different things. But I think that we need to get out of it. And we need to let the people that are here and having a voice try and come up with positive solutions and then come back and share that with us.
Mr. Mayor, Councilor Gladwell, thank you. That's excellent. And that was the B part, but spoken better than I would have, of the resolution I was going to say. I want the resolutions taken off the table because they're a road noise. And if we repeal them, and using Councilor Gladwell's words, which are far better than the ones I would have used, at the same time we repeal, we empower or impanel a committee with deadlines to come up with alternatives, then we eliminate the road noise and some of the confusion and problems and are looking for a positive solution, which is, I think, what we're all looking for. That's my thought.
Does this, in your thinking, councilors, does this whole thing of cigarette smoking is that still sort of the snake in the grass?
I think Councilor Gladwell or Councilor Quigley had a lot of excellent input.
Actually, well, yeah, the Oregon Health Authority, that it really is all, can be covered without us doing anything with it.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay. Anything else?
Again, I don't want to, that's a hammer again. I want to help businesses grow and come up with a solution, not just say we don't need to worry about that because we can make some complaints and they would have to abide by it. I don't see that as being helpful to the businesses downtown. I see coming up with solutions that can meet the needs of the people that are currently doing business downtown being the important thing. And I think that we need to, again, not make the same mistakes that were made maybe by whomever. It doesn't matter to me. But we need to have the business community, we need to have some property owners, we need to have some people at large that agree to give up their time to take a look at this ordinance, make changes as they would want them to be, and bring it back to the committee. That's what I would like to see happen.
Mr. Mayor, can I?
Yeah, go ahead.
Amend that to make a resolution that we repeal 1015 and 1019 just to get the road noise off the table,